Ayubowan, Vanakkam. I'm Vayoni Dimel. This is Boston Lanka News, bringing you news, views and entertainment from Boston and USA. Sri Lankan newspaper Daily News, just like old Soviet newspaper Pravda, according to the US Embassy in Sri Lanka. Many did not take seriously when he first wrote about the LTTE camps in 1980s. Victor Karunairajan speaks about his experience as a writer in Sri Lanka. At last, a court order to arrest Duminda Silva. Will that order be carried out by the police? Sri Lanka's new law, a blow to attract foreign investment, says global credit ratings agency in New York. TNA visit to USA, promoted as a decisive step forward. Was it that successful? Is Pradeep Eknaligoda in a foreign country? That's the information former Attorney General Mohan Peiris shared with the world. Former President Chandrika at Harvard, talking about how the paradise was lost. The Sri Lankan newspaper Daily News functions more like the old Soviet newspaper Pravda, according to a US Embassy in Sri Lanka cable that was sent to Washington. The government's Daily News has become at this point little more a Rajapaksa daily campaign brochure. We believe that it is now fulfilling the same function as the old Soviet Pravda, aimed not so much at persuading a general audience. The paper primarily serves as a guide to the latest official campaign position for party and state functionaries, the US Embassy in Colombo wrote to Washington. These remarks on state-run media came after US ambassador's meeting with the Elections Commissioner Dayananda Dissanayake on December 18, 2009. The remarks by Washington's ambassador to Sri Lanka, Patricia A. Bhutenis, was revealed by the WikiLeaks leaked cable that classified as confidential by ambassador. There has been lots of concerns about the Sri Lanka media freedom recently. According to some, media freedom has gone from bad to worse in Sri Lanka. Yet, some journalists like Malinda Seneviratne thinks differently.
There are a lot of attacks on media personnel, which have the major problem is that they have not been investigated to conclusion. But I don't think that journalists have any special immunity, from the laws of the land. If they infringe the law, then they have to be, called and action should be taken. That is one thing that we have to understand. Sometimes these media organizations act as though they are saints. They are not. One of the biggest problems in Sri Lanka in the media is that those who advocate media freedom, those who are vociferous about media freedom, are utterly compromised in terms of integrity, in terms of they are engaged in fraud. The main media organizations which say Sri Lanka is a failed state, that there is no media freedom, they don't have the moral right to talk. I think that absolute media freedom is a myth.
Victor Karunairajan, a journalist, an advocate of community concerns and communicator, fled Sri Lanka with his daughters, with the LTTE gunman virtually at his door. Now he lives in Canada, but regularly travels to Sri Lanka to work as a volunteer with the displaced people in northern Sri Lanka. Mr. Karunairajan, you are a journalist, an activist, an educator, a playwright, and I understand that you are also a holistic healer who has vast experience of different areas. Could you tell us briefly about your background?
I'm a journalist. I have worked in various countries, in England, Seychelles, Philippines, Canada, India for a short while, and of course in Sri Lanka. I'm not in holistic healing, but my organization is very much, and I help them there. I have worked in various fields. My foremost interest is organic agriculture. early childhood education, appropriate technology, rural development. I am a village boy, and agriculture is of great importance to me. And I also love Carnatic music and Indian classical dances. I have written a book on dances in India. I have 2 children and 4 grandchildren, 76 years old, a Tamil Christian, but I have no borders. I'm an interfaith, intercultural, international man.
You are one of the earliest writers to sound the alarm of tiger camps in the northern jungles and thereby placed your life at great risk. Now, could you share how you got to know about these camps? Did anybody take you seriously when you wrote about these camps?
Of course, at first nobody believed me, but I was associated with a young, wonderful Sinhalese journalist, Ranil Veerasinghe. We both worked on features for Sun and weekend newspapers, and Ranil and I discussed this matter. We suspected something was going wrong somewhere. So we camouflaged ourselves as woodcutters, made our beard grow and mustache grow, and roughened ourselves a lot. And we made inquiries in area surrounding Murugandi in the northern province. Murugandi is where the famous temple is, not far from Mankulam. And we went towards Mannar and found that there were a couple of camps, and discovered that was the first of the 2 tiger camps. And they never suspected that we were newspaper people. They thought we were just ordinary workers. But we took a great risk at that time. But since Ranil was very young and I was a little older, we liked adventure a lot. And then we started writing about camps, being active. And I happened to speak at a Rotary, Columbus South Rotary meeting one afternoon. And Minister Kumarasurian was there. That was the excellent government minister. Mr. Kumarasurian came from my village, but he lived in Malaysia for a long time. So when I mentioned about tiger camps, he got up and said that's a lot of nonsense. He said poppycock. But I said, I can't speak in more detail because I didn't want to say that we were there like woodcutters, etc. But I said, I have enough evidence to show that these camps are there, and very soon you will know that it is true. And a few weeks later, police officer Basi Abdullah was killed, and along with a couple of his colleagues, and their bodies were found in a well. So I think that was the first time that people really came to know down south. In the north, they had suspicions of something going on like that. But of course, I started writing in the Sun and Weekend about tiger camps and tiger activities without mentioning our experience. So Ranil and I often got threats and all the rest of it. And that was why in 1983, before the riots, I decided to go to Seychelles because my life was in danger. So with my children, I went to Seychelles.
The court order issued by Colombo Additional Magistrate Prasanna Alvis to arrest Colombo District MP Duminda Silva in connection with the killing of former MP Bharata Lakshman Premachandra and produce him before courts was hailed by many as the step in the right direction to restore the confidence of the general public on the law and order in Sri Lanka. Last week, the leader of the House, Nimal Siripala de Silva, said in the parliament that MP Duminda Silva is not a murder suspect. Minister de Silva, a lawyer by profession, was responding to a question raised by acting opposition leader John Amaratunga as to why MP Silva has not been questioned with regard to the Mulleriya gunfight. Meanwhile, Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa, speaking to the media, said that MP Duminda Silva is not a drug dealer nor has any connections with the underworld.
මේ හරි කනගාටුයි ආරක්ෂක ලේකම්තුමා කියලා තියෙනවා මේ කොළඹ දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ මැරකම පාතාලේ නැතුව දේශපාලනය කරන්න බෑ කියලා. ඉතින් ඔබතුමාම මේ විදිහේ දේවල් කියනවා නම් මොන කතාවද මේ දේශපාලනය ගැන මොන කතාවද?
According to Swarna Premachandra, sister of Bharata Premachandra, they have approached Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper, seeking support to ensure that justice is done with regard to Premachandra's murder. Premachandra family members plan to meet with the Canadian Prime Minister.
ලංකාවේ නීතියෙන් කිසියම් හෝ දෙයක් සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා අපිට වැටහුනොත් අපි මේක ජාත්‍යන්තරයට ගෙනියනවා. ඒක අනිවාර්යයි. ඒක කරනවම තමයි. ඉතින් දැනටමත් ඒකේ පළවෙනි අඩිය අපි තියලා ඉවරයි. මගේ මාමා කොමන්වෙල්ත් එකට ලියුමක් ලිව්වා මේ සිද්ධිය සම්බන්ධයෙන්. කිසිම විදිහකින් අපි කිසිම කෙනෙක්ට ඇඟිල්ල දික් කරන්නවත් මුකුත් නැහැ. මේ වෙච්ච අසාධාරණයට සාධාරණයක් වෙනවද නැද්ද කියලා එක දිහා අපි බලාගෙන ඉන්න. එහෙම වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා අපිට පෙනුනොත් අපි අපේ plan B එක කියන්නේ ජාත්‍යන්තරයට මේ දේ ගෙනියනවා.
The visit of the Tamil National Alliance delegation from Sri Lanka to the US late last month was hailed by Tamil parties and media as a decisive step forward in the recognition of the rights of the Tamil people. Yet, the visit did not turn out as expected. The TNA did not meet with the Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, nor was Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asia Robert O. Blake available. Only a relatively junior official, Wendy Sherman, who has served as Under-Secretary for Political Affairs since September, was assigned to speak to the delegation. TNA delegation attempted to meet with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, but the scheduled appointment was cancelled at the last moment without any explanation, and one of Ban's undersecretaries, Lynn Pascoe, met with the TNA delegation. Speaking to the media, TNA parliamentarian M.A. Sumadiran, who was one of the TNA delegates who visited USA, said the US officials were keen to know about this current political situation in the country, and the TNA delegation had discussed the humanitarian concerns in the north and east as well as the political reconciliation process. According to the New York-based global credit ratings agency Moody's, Sri Lanka's new law to nationalize underutilized private firms was a blow to attracting foreign investment into Sri Lanka. The government has signed into law the controversial bill that allows the nationalization of companies that had received state land or tax breaks in the past 20 years. It has embarked 37 firms for takeover. The measure may undermine the predictability of future policies and increase investor uncertainty, which would make it credit negative for Sri Lanka, Moody's said in a statement. Pradeep Eknaligoda, the missing Sri Lankan journalist, has taken refuge in a foreign country, according to the former Attorney General Mohan Peiris. Responding to a question on the disappearance of Pradeep Eknaligoda at the 47th session of the Committee Against Torture in Geneva, Mr. Mohan Peiris, former Attorney General and now an advisor to the government, said that according to reliable information that he could vouch for, Mr. Eknaligoda has taken refuge in a foreign country and that the campaign against his disappearance is a hoax. Mr. Peiris failed to provide detailed information on the alleged whereabouts of Mr. Eknaligoda despite claiming that he had reliable information. Chandrika Bandaranayake Kumaratunga, former Sri Lankan president, delivered a speech titled Negotiating Identities and Emotions, Ethnopolitical Conflict in Sri Lanka at the Harvard University on November 14th. According to President Kumaratunga, Identity politics has long been the bedrock of political conflict in Sri Lanka. Confronting this identity crisis would require that we manage existing diversity, Kumaratunga said, and redirect the richness of that diversity towards positive change. Kumaratunga also addressed the failure of previous Sri Lankan administrations. One major mistake that exacerbated identity politics was the now defunct Sinhala Only Act, which recognized the Sinhalese tongue as the country's sole official language. This created a major setback for Tamils and other minority groups seeking equal opportunity in jobs and education, she said. We brought all kinds of rules that made it more difficult for the Tamils to get into schools, said Kumaratunga. At the end of a talk, one audience member asked what American students can learn from Sri Lanka's history of political conflict. They can learn how paradise was lost, Kumaratunga lamented. Harvard International Negotiation Program, the Global Institute of Health, the South Asian Initiative, and the Program on Negotiation at Harvard Law School sponsored former President's lecture. That concludes our news edition. We meet you again with another news edition of News, Views and Entertainment from Boston and USA. Till then, goodbye.